Alright everybody, I thought today we'd take a look at mixing on the iPad app for the M32. A lot of times when I go out for shows, the console doesn't come with me. If it does, it might be the smaller 32R or the 16 channel rack space. And so I'm mixing on the iPad, I'd say about 60% of the time. So we'll just go over a few things. A couple of things I like to do. We'll start with getting our iPad to communicate with the console or the rack unit. We're already assigned to the correct IP address, but when you start up, you're probably not going to be on the correct IP address. So up in the top left hand of the iPad app, we'll click on the little eye icon, and that'll bring up our connect page where we can input the IP address for the console. In this case, our IP address on the M32 is 192.168.0.3. So we just enter that on the top left IP address for the M32 console and hit connect. And now we're in full control of our console. It's really just that easy. If you get disconnected because you walk too far away from your router, or the signal just drops out, you can always come back up here, click the icon, and connect back to the console. One of the main things I wanted to point out today was the Sends on Fader button. A lot of times I see guys making the mistake on the iPad app of just clicking on an individual channel, like the snare top, and then clicking on Sends. This allows you to see all 12 buses, but you can only assign one channel to each bus. So if you're trying to quickly put together an in-ear mix that has drums, bass, click track, this is going to take way too long doing it this way. So we'll go back out to home, and on the top left we'll hit Sends on Fader. Now we can see all 12 buses along the top above our tracks, and we just quickly click on a bus. If it's labeled correctly, we have Richie's in-ear mix here. Now we can give him the overheads, give him the snare, give him the bass, give him a vocal, boost up the click track, boost up the playback tracks, and quickly switch over to our reverb. And we can push our vocal into reverb, make sure our snare is going in there really well. We have a chorus delay, put a little bit of guitar in there. This is a much more efficient way to set up your buses for in-ears or getting your instruments to your effects. And a lot of guys I see missing that on the app. The other thing I wanted to look at today was, at 90% of my shows, I'm getting a mono tracks, playback tracks, coming on the right hand side of a snake, and then the click coming on the left hand side. A lot of times it's coming out of their computer on an 1/8 inch headphone send. So the left will have the click, the right will have the mono tracks, which is fine, but it leaves something to be desired spatially when our tracks are just blandly up the center. So there's our track, just right up the center, kind of doing nothing on the left and right. So the way I like to get around that, we'll go back to Sends on Fader. And we'll go to our reverb, push in a little bit of reverb, push in a lot of delay it looks like I wanted, and push it into our chorus. And then when we bring in our effects, now we've got a nice simulated stereo playback track from a mono signal. Obviously it's not ideal, but we have to work with what we get. The other thing I wanted to briefly jump on today is when I'm mixing, I like to use the Waves multi-rack, specifically the C6 multiband compressor. On the M32, unfortunately, we don't have a C6, but we do have the stereo combinator that we can use. And so if I'm not running my laptop with Waves multi-rack, I'll pull up a stereo combinator and send my lead male and my lead female vocal to it. What this allows us to do is compress 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different bands of the frequency on that vocal, as opposed to just a global EQ and a global compressor on a vocal, which works, I would say, 80% of the time. But if you really want to get surgical and kind of take your mixes that much further, multiband compression is a great way to do that. You can get in trouble very quickly with the multiband compressor, so if you're not familiar with it, I'd highly recommend getting some live tracks like we have here today that you can bring home in your DAW and practice this on. So we have our 2 male vocalists going to our stereo combinator, and we have 20 hertz to 80 hertz for one band, 80 hertz to 400 hertz or so, 400 hertz to 1.5K, 1.5K to 5K, and 5K to 20K, broken up into the sections of the frequencies. And this way we can compress the vocal as it's coming in and out in those different frequencies. And if it's getting really heavy in the lower mids, but the upper mids and the highs are clean, the multiband compressor is just going to grab those lower mids and pull them down for you momentarily, and then bring it back in. It's a great way to create a much cleaner vocal mic. So as you can see, the different frequency bands on the combinator are jumping up and down. And this is indicating our gain reduction at each band of the frequency. So in the lower mids, between 100 and 400, we're seeing some action when they're performing the rap part of the song. And right here where he's singing much higher in his register, you're seeing a lot of activity in the mid-band frequency between 400 and 1.5K. And the low mids and the highs aren't necessarily being affected as much. So we can just click into our mid-band section here. We adjust our threshold. In purple, you can see nothing's being affected there. But as I start pulling down my threshold, you'll see that gain reduction coming in. And then we can just boost that section of the frequency. So you can really hear that that's an upper mid honk that we're compressing. And then just that band of the frequency, we can pull down and tuck and create a much, much cleaner vocal. We're going to do broader video on multiband compression later, but I just wanted to show you that today, guys. So hopefully that gave you some helpful tips mixing on the iPad app for the M32 X32. If you guys have any questions, feel free to leave a comment. We'd love to hear from you. And if you like the videos you're watching, make sure you hit subscribe. We'll see you soon.
It's a tablet late. Ain't talking warranty, had to regulate.